For years, my sister Rachel believed she was the golden child, the one destined for greatness while I struggled in her shadow. When I finally landed my dream project at a cutting-edge biotech firm, she couldn't stand it. What I didn't know was just how far she'd go to destroy me. The sabotage was perfect, the humiliation public, and my career seemingly over. But Rachel made one critical mistake. She never bothered to understand what I was actually working on. That failed project she destroyed, it was worth millions. And the irony of how her jealousy backfired is something I still can't quite believe, even now. My name is Jennifer, and I'm 52 years old. For most of my life, I believed that blood was thicker than water, that family meant unconditional support, that sisters were supposed to be each other's biggest cheerleaders. I was wrong about all of it, and it took me half a century to figure that out. Rachel is my younger sister by 3 years. Growing up in suburban Chicago, we shared a bedroom, fought over clothes, and competed for our parents' attention like most siblings do. But there was always something different about Rachel's competitiveness. It wasn't playful, it was desperate, almost hungry. When I made the honor roll in 8th grade, Rachel cried for 2 days until our mother got her a new bike to make her feel better. When I got accepted to Northwestern University, Rachel threw such a fit that our parents bought her a car for her 16th birthday, even though she wouldn't be driving for months. I told myself it was normal sibling rivalry. I told myself she'd grow out of it. She never did. By the time we were adults, the pattern had crystallized. Rachel became a real estate agent in the wealthy North Shore suburbs, selling million-dollar homes to executives and doctors. She was good at it too, with her perfectly highlighted hair, her expensive suits, and her ability to make people feel like they were getting the deal of a lifetime. She married Brad, a corporate lawyer with a corner office downtown, and they bought a sprawling house in Wilmette with a pool and a 3-car garage. From the outside, Rachel had everything. I took a different path. I studied biochemistry and spent years working in research labs, first as a technician, then as a project manager. The pay was modest compared to Rachel's commissions, and I lived in a small condo in Evanston that I'd bought before the market went crazy. I never married, though I had a few serious relationships that didn't work out. My life was quieter, less flashy, more focused on the work itself. I loved what I did. I loved the challenge of solving problems that seemed impossible, of pushing the boundaries of what science could achieve. Our parents, Edward and Louise, were proud of both of us in their own way. But I could see how Rachel's lifestyle impressed them more. The big house, the successful husband, the material markers of achievement. When we gathered for holidays, Rachel would talk about her latest sale, the wealthy clients she was courting, the vacation they were planning to Tuscany. I'd talk about research protocols and grant applications, and I could see my father's eyes glaze over a bit. He was a retired insurance salesman who believed in tangible results, in things you could see and count. Molecules and lab experiments were abstract to him. Rachel never missed an opportunity to remind me of the difference between our lives. It was always wrapped in concern, always delivered with a sweet smile. Jenny, don't you get lonely in that little condo? You should think about buying a real house. Or, Jenny, you work so hard for such little recognition. Have you ever thought about doing something more lucrative? The implication was clear. I had settled for less, made the wrong choices, was missing out on the real rewards of life. I learned to brush it off. I had my work, my small circle of close friends, my weekend hikes along Lake Michigan, my book club. I didn't need Rachel's approval or her pity. But looking back, I can see how her constant comparisons wore on me over the years, how they made me second-guess myself in quiet moments late at night. Everything changed 3 years ago when I was 49. I'd been working at Biogenesis Solutions, a mid-sized biotech company in Skokie, for about 7 years. I was the senior project manager for our pharmaceutical development division, overseeing teams of researchers working on various drug candidates. It was challenging work, but I'd gotten comfortable with the rhythms of the job, the politics of the industry, the slow pace of getting new treatments through trials and approvals. Then Dr. Sarah Chen joined our company as the new chief scientific officer. Sarah was a brilliant molecular biologist who'd made a name for herself studying protein synthesis and cellular repair mechanisms. She was only 43 but already had an impressive track record of patents and publications. More importantly, she had vision. She saw potential where others saw dead ends. Sarah and I hit it off immediately. We both loved hiking, we both preferred coffee to wine, and we both had a passion for work that bordered on obsessive. Within weeks of her arrival, she pulled me into her office for a confidential conversation. "Jennifer, I've been reviewing all of our current projects," she said, closing the door behind me. "Most of them are solid, but incremental. Nothing that's going to change the game. But I have an idea, something I've been thinking about for years but never had the resources to pursue properly." She pulled out a folder filled with research papers and diagrams. "Have you heard of cellular senescence?" I had, vaguely. It was the process by which cells stop dividing as they age, essentially going into retirement. Some researchers believed it was connected to aging and age-related diseases. "What if we could selectively target and eliminate senescent cells?" Sarah continued, her eyes bright with excitement. "Not just slow their accumulation, but actually clear them from tissues. The research suggests this could potentially reverse certain aspects of biological aging, improve immune function, even prevent some cancers." It sounded like science fiction, but Sarah showed me the preliminary studies, the theoretical frameworks, the early-stage experiments that suggested it might actually be possible. The field was called senolytics, and it was still in its infancy, but the potential applications were staggering. "I want to put together a small dedicated team to pursue this," Sarah said. "It's high risk. It might not work. But if it does, Jennifer, we're talking about something that could revolutionize medicine. And I want you to lead the project management side." I should have been purely excited. This was exactly the kind of groundbreaking work I dreamed of when I first entered the field. But I was also terrified. High risk meant high failure potential. If this didn't work, it could be a black mark on my career. Years of effort wasted, resources squandered. I was 49 years old. How many more chances would I get? But Sarah believed in it. And somewhere deep inside, so did I. "I'm in," I told her. We called it Project Renewal. The name was deliberately vague, designed not to attract too much attention while we worked out the fundamental science. Sarah assembled a small team of researchers, and I coordinated everything from budget allocation to lab schedules to regulatory consultations. We worked late nights and weekends, driven by the possibility that we might actually be onto something revolutionary. For the first year, we kept it quiet within the company. Biogenesis's CEO, Marcus Rothberg, knew about it and had approved modest funding, but he was skeptical. He'd been in the industry long enough to see plenty of promising ideas fizzle out. He gave us space to work, but made it clear that we'd need to show concrete results within 2 years, or the project would be shelved. During this time, I didn't tell Rachel much about what I was doing. At family dinners, when she asked about work, I'd give generic answers. Busy as always, or working on some new initiatives. I'd learned over the years that sharing my professional excitements with Rachel was a mistake. She'd either dismiss what I was doing as too academic and impractical, or she'd find some way to turn it into a comparison that made her look better. But our mother, Louise, noticed that I seemed more energized, more engaged. "You're glowing these days, Jenny," she said to me one Sunday afternoon when we were alone in her kitchen, preparing dessert while the others watched football in the living room. "Is there someone special?" I laughed. "No, Mom, just really invested in a project at work." "Tell me about it," she said, genuinely curious. I gave her the simplified version. We were researching ways to help the body clear out old, damaged cells that contribute to aging and disease. If it worked, it could lead to treatments for everything from arthritis to Alzheimer's. My mother's eyes widened. "Jenny, that sounds incredible, like something out of a movie." "It's very preliminary," I cautioned. "It might not work, but we're trying." "Your father would be so proud," she said softly. My dad had passed away 2 years earlier from complications related to heart disease and diabetes. He'd been only 73. "He always worried about you, you know. Worried you'd spent your whole life in a lab and not experienced enough of the world. But if you're working on something that could help people the way he needed help, that's everything." Her words stayed with me. My father had worried about me, thought I'd missed out. Maybe he'd been right. But maybe this project could give my choices meaning in a way that even he would have understood. The breakthrough came 18 months into the project. One of our lead researchers, Dr. Amit Patel, discovered a specific combination of compounds that could selectively induce apoptosis in senescent cells without harming healthy ones. The results in our cell cultures were remarkable, and when we tested it in animal models, we saw measurable improvements in tissue function and reduced markers of aging. Sarah was ecstatic. "This is it, Jennifer. This is the proof of concept we needed." We presented our findings to Marcus and the executive board. They were cautiously optimistic but wanted more data before committing significant resources. Fair enough. We planned a larger round of animal studies and began preliminary work on what a clinical trial pathway might look like. That's when I made my first mistake. I told Rachel. It was Thanksgiving, about 2 years ago now. We were all gathered at Rachel and Brad's house, the one with the enormous dining room and the chandelier that cost more than my car. Rachel had hired a catering company to prepare most of the meal, but she still managed to make it seem like she'd slaved over every dish. The turkey was perfect, the sides were gourmet, the table setting looked like something from a magazine. After dinner, while the men were watching football and the catering staff cleaned up, Rachel, our mother, and I sat in her luxurious living room with glasses of wine. Rachel was talking about a recent sale, a lakefront property in Lake Forest that had gone for $3.2 million. "The commission alone could pay for a year of vacations," she said with a satisfied smile. "Brad and I are thinking about buying a place in Scottsdale for the winters, an investment property that we can also use." My mother made approving sounds. I sipped my wine and tried not to feel the familiar pang of inadequacy. Then Rachel turned to me. "And what about you, Jenny? Still working on your little lab projects?" There was something in her tone, that subtle condescension I'd heard my whole life, that made me want to push back. "Actually, I'm leading a really significant research initiative right now," I said. "We're developing a potential treatment that could address cellular aging and age-related diseases." Rachel's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "That sounds very science fiction." "It's real science," I said. "We've had promising results in our preliminary studies. If it works, it could be genuinely revolutionary." "How revolutionary are we talking?" my mother asked, leaning forward. I probably should have been more careful with my words, but the wine and Rachel's dismissive tone loosened my tongue. "We're talking about potential applications in everything from arthritis to cancer prevention. If we can get this to human trials and eventually to market, it could be worth hundreds of millions, maybe more." I saw something flicker in Rachel's eyes. Not excitement for me, not pride, something darker. "Well, that's quite ambitious," she said smoothly. "I hope it works out for you. Though you know how these research things go, right? Lots of promise, lots of hype, and then usually nothing comes of it." "This is different," I said, immediately regretting how defensive I sounded. "I'm sure it is, sweetie," Rachel said, patting my hand. "I'm sure it is." The conversation moved on, but I noticed Rachel asking subtle questions throughout the rest of the evening. What company was I working for again? How big was the project? Who else was involved? I answered vaguely, some instinct telling me to protect the information, even though I didn't yet understand why. A few weeks later, I got a call from Sarah. Her voice was tight with tension. "Jennifer, we need to talk, in person. Can you come to my office right now?" I was there in 15 minutes. Sarah closed the door and pulled the blinds. "We have a problem," she said. "A big one. Do you remember Christopher Harding?" I did. Christopher was a researcher who'd been part of our team during the first 6 months of Project Renewal. He'd been brilliant but difficult, constantly clashing with other team members, questioning every decision Sarah made. Eventually, Sarah had transferred him to a different project. He'd left biogenesis entirely about 8 months ago to join Vitaltech Pharmaceuticals, one of our competitors. "What about him?" I asked, though dread was already forming in my stomach. "Vitaltech just announced they're pursuing a senolytic compound," Sarah said. "The approach they're describing is remarkably similar to ours, too similar to be coincidence." My blood went cold. Christopher took our research? I don't have proof yet, but it certainly looks that way. He had access to our early findings before he left, and now Vitaltech is suddenly in the exact same space, using what sounds like a very similar methodology. "Can we do anything? Legally?" Sarah shook her head. "It's complicated. Christopher signed an NDA, But if he claims he developed the ideas independently, or that they were already in the public domain, it's hard to prove otherwise. And even if we could prove it, a legal battle would take years and cost a fortune. Biogenesis might not want to pursue it. She was right. When we brought it to Marcus and the legal team, they confirmed our worst fears. Yes, it looked like Christopher had stolen our approach. Yes, it was unethical, but proving it in court would be expensive and uncertain, and in the meantime, Vitaltech would race ahead with their version while we were stuck in litigation. The best thing we can do is move faster, Marcus said. Get to clinical trials before they do. File for patents on every specific innovation we can. Beat them at their own game. It was devastating, but not fatal. We pushed harder, worked longer hours, refined our approach. We filed patent applications on our specific compound formulations. We accelerated our animal studies. We were still ahead in terms of data quality, even if Vitaltech had stolen the basic concept. But the stress was enormous. Sarah was barely sleeping. The team was burning out. And I was coordinating everything, trying to keep morale up while simultaneously dealing with patent lawyers, regulatory consultants, and the constant pressure from Marcus to show results. I should have known Rachel would insert herself somehow. I just didn't expect it to happen the way it did. About 3 months after the Vitaltech situation emerged, Rachel called me. It was unusual because we typically only talked at family events or when our mother coordinated something. She sounded friendly, concerned even. Hey Jenny, I heard through the grapevine that you're dealing with some corporate espionage stuff at work. That must be so stressful. I was immediately on guard. Where did you hear that? Oh, people talk. I was just worried about you. Are you doing okay? I'm fine. We're handling it. That's good. Listen, Brad actually knows some people in the biotech industry through his law firm. He mentioned your situation to a colleague, and they suggested you might want to talk to some investors who specialize in early-stage medical research, people who could provide additional funding and resources to help you compete better. It sounded helpful on the surface, but something about it felt off. Thanks, but we have funding through the company. Sure, but wouldn't it be nice to have backup options, just in case? These investors could help you secure the project even if your company decides it's too risky or expensive to continue. I'll think about it, I said, wanting to end the conversation. Great. I'll have Brad send you some names and contact information. No pressure, just options. She hung up, and I sat there feeling uneasy. Why was Rachel suddenly so interested in my work? Why was Brad's law firm discussing my project with investors? The answer came 2 weeks later when Sarah stormed into my office, her face flushed with anger. Did you talk to anyone outside the company about Project Renewal? She demanded. No. Why? Because someone leaked detailed information about our research to BioInvestor Weekly. They published an article this morning describing our work, our timeline, our challenges with the Vitaltech situation, everything. And they cited sources close to the project. My heart sank. Let me see. She handed me her tablet, and I read the article with growing horror. It was all there. Our approach to senolytic therapy, our preliminary results, our patent applications, the Christopher Harding situation, even quotes about internal disagreements on whether to push for faster clinical trials or prioritize more thorough preclinical work. Whoever had leaked this information had access to details that should have been strictly confidential. The article wasn't entirely negative, but it exposed our strategy to competitors and created the impression that Project Renewal was chaotic and troubled. I didn't talk to anyone, I said. I swear, Sarah. Then who did? Because this is catastrophic. Now every competitor knows exactly what we're doing. Vitaltech will adjust their strategy based on this. Other companies might jump into the space. We've lost our competitive advantage. Marcus called an emergency meeting. The entire executive team was there, along with legal counsel. They wanted to know who had leaked the information and how. A formal internal investigation was launched. I racked my brain trying to figure out who could have done it. Then I remembered Rachel's phone call. The investors Brad knew. The suspicious timing. That evening, I called Rachel. I tried to keep my voice calm. Did Brad share information about my project with anyone? What? No. Why would you ask that? Because there was a leak, Rachel. Detailed confidential information that just appeared in a major industry publication. and it happened right after you called me about investors." There was a pause. Then Rachel laughed, but it sounded forced. "Jenny, you can't possibly think I had anything to do with that. I was trying to help you." "Were you? Or were you trying to sabotage me?" "That's ridiculous and insulting. I'm your sister." "Then how did this happen, Rachel? How did an industry publication get information that only a handful of people should have known?" "How should I know? Maybe you have other leaks in your company. Maybe one of your researchers talked. Don't blame me for your company's security problems." She hung up on me. And I sat there, hands shaking, knowing in my gut that she was involved but having no way to prove it. The investigation eventually concluded that the leak had likely come from outside the company, possibly through Brad's law firm, which had apparently been approached by someone claiming to represent me seeking advice on intellectual property protection. The someone had provided enough accurate details about the project to seem legitimate, and a junior associate had discussed the case with a colleague who had connections to BioInvestor Weekly. The law firm claimed it was a misunderstanding, that they'd thought they were helping. But the damage was done. Marcus was furious. The board started questioning whether Project Renewal was worth the trouble. Sarah was devastated. And I was being blamed, however unfairly, for the security breach because it had originated from my family connection. "I need to know," Sarah said to me one late evening as we worked alone in the lab. "Did your sister really do this?" "I think so, but I can't prove it." "Why would she? What does she gain?" That was the question I'd been asking myself. Rachel didn't work in biotech. She didn't have competing interests. The only thing I could come up with was the thing that had driven her entire life. She couldn't stand to see me succeed, especially at something that might overshadow her own achievements. "She's always been jealous of me," I said quietly. "I know that sounds narcissistic, but it's true. She can't help herself. If I'm doing well, she needs to cut me down." Sarah looked at me with a mixture of pity and frustration. "That's pathological." "I know." The situation got worse. With our strategy exposed, Vitaltech accelerated their timeline and announced they were moving to human trials within 6 months. We couldn't match that pace without cutting corners, which Sarah refused to do. Our patent applications were being challenged based on prior art claims, forcing us into expensive legal defenses. Investor confidence in biogenesis was shaken by the perception that we couldn't protect our intellectual property. Then came the crisis point. Biogenesis lost a major contract with a pharmaceutical partner due to unrelated issues with another project. The company's financial situation became strained. Marcus called Sarah and me into his office. "I'm sorry," he said, and I could see that he genuinely was. "The board has decided we need to cut costs significantly. Project Renewal is being suspended. We'll maintain the patents and the data, but active research is being halted." "For how long?" Sarah asked. "Indefinitely." Sarah looked like she'd been punched. "Marcus, we're so close. We have the science. We just need time to get through trials." "I know, but we don't have the resources right now. I'm sorry." We were devastated. 2 years of work, the most exciting research of my career, just halted. Sarah started looking for other positions immediately. Several of our team members were laid off. I was kept on because of my seniority, but I was reassigned to manage legacy projects, boring maintenance work on existing products. I fell into a depression. I'd gambled on something meaningful, something revolutionary, and I'd lost. And my own sister had helped orchestrate the failure. I stopped going to family events. I made excuses when my mother called to arrange dinners. I couldn't look at Rachel without feeling a mixture of rage and heartbreak. Then, about 8 months after Project Renewal was suspended, I got a call from an unknown number. "Is this Jennifer Morrison?" "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I'm the CEO of Apex Therapeutics. I'd like to discuss a business opportunity with you. Can we meet?" I'd heard of Apex Therapeutics. They were a smaller biotech company specializing in aging research and regenerative medicine. They had a solid reputation and some successful products in the market, but they weren't a major player. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago. Elena was a striking woman in her early 60s with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She got right to the point. "I've been following Project Renewal since before it was publicly leaked," she said. I have contacts at Biogenesis who kept me informed because they knew I'd be interested. When I saw that the project was being suspended, I did some digging into the research data and the patents you'd filed. Okay, I said cautiously. Jennifer, the work you did is brilliant. The science is solid. The approach is innovative. The only reason it's not moving forward is because Biogenesis doesn't have the resources to execute it right now. That's correct. What if I told you that Apex is very interested in acquiring the Project Renewal intellectual property from Biogenesis? We have the capital, the infrastructure, and the commitment to take it through clinical trials. My heart started beating faster. Biogenesis would have to be willing to sell. They would. Marcus and I have already had preliminary discussions. They need cash, and they'd rather see the research continue than have it sit in a drawer gathering dust. But there's a condition. What's that? You have to come with it. You and Dr. Chen, if she's willing. We want the people who understand this work intimately. I'm not interested in buying patents and data without the expertise to execute on them properly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want to hire me? I want to hire you as the Vice President of Senolytic Research and Development. Sarah would be our Chief Scientific Officer. You'd have equity in the company. And if the treatment works, if we get it to market, you'd be looking at significant financial returns. I sat there, stunned. This was everything I'd hoped for. Everything that had been taken away, being handed back to me. I need to talk to Sarah, I said. Of course, but I need an answer within a week. I'm making this offer to you first, but if you're not interested, I'll pursue acquiring the IP without you and hire different researchers. I called Sarah that night. She was working at a smaller biotech company, managing projects she found uninspiring. When I told her about Elena's offer, she was quiet for a long moment. Is this real? She finally asked. I think so. I'm meeting with their legal team tomorrow to go over the details. Jennifer, if this works, if we can actually finish what we started, this could change everything. I know. We both accepted Elena's offer. The negotiations with Biogenesis took another month, but eventually, they agreed to sell the Project Renewal intellectual property to Apex for a sum that helped shore up their finances. Sarah and I transitioned to our new roles. We rebuilt the team with some of our original researchers and some new talent. We had better funding, better equipment, and a leadership team that truly believed in the project. It took another year, but we advanced the research significantly. Our compound, which we renamed APX-247, showed even better results in our expanded animal studies. We filed additional patents on the refined formulation. We began the process of applying for FDA approval to start Phase 1 clinical trials. During all of this, I didn't tell Rachel anything. I didn't tell my mother either, because I knew she'd share it with Rachel. I kept my head down and focused on the work. Then came the day that changed everything. We'd just gotten FDA approval to begin Phase 1 trials, and the news went public. Apex's stock price jumped significantly. Industry publications ran articles about the promising new senolytic therapy in development. Vitaltech's program, by contrast, had run into problems. Their compound had shown toxicity issues in some trial participants, forcing them to halt their study and go back to the drawing board. We were winning. That evening, I got a call from my mother. She was crying. Jenny, I just saw the news. Is it true? Is this your project? Yes, Mom. It's the same research I was doing at Biogenesis. I've been working on it at a new company. Why didn't you tell me? I hesitated. I needed to protect it this time. I couldn't risk another leak. There was a long pause. You think Rachel had something to do with what happened before? I know she did, Mom. More silence. Then quietly, I think I knew it too. I just didn't want to believe it. A week later, Rachel called me. Her voice was tight and strained. Congratulations on your big success, she said, and it sounded like the words were being torn from her throat. Thank you. I saw that Apex's stock went up 23%. I imagine your equity stake is worth quite a bit now. It's worth something, yes. Brad looked into it. With your position and the likely number of shares you received, you're probably sitting on several $1 million in company stock. And if this drug actually makes it to market, it could be worth tens of millions. I didn't confirm or deny. I just waited. That's quite a change from your little condo in Evanston, isn't it? Rachel, is there something you actually wanted to talk about? I just think it's interesting how things work out sometimes. You always acted like you were above caring about money, like your noble research was its own reward. But now that there's real money involved, you're suddenly very quiet about it, very protective. I learned my lesson about sharing things with you. The words hung in the air between us. I heard her sharp intake of breath. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know what you did, Rachel. The leak to BioInvestor Weekly, going through Brad's firm, trying to sabotage my project. That's insane. You have no proof. I don't need proof. I know, and you know, and that's enough. You're paranoid, Jennifer. You always have been, always playing the victim, always thinking people are out to get you. Only you, Rachel, only you has ever been out to get me. She hung up. I didn't hear from her for months, but I heard about her. My mother, who was caught in the middle of this but trying her best to maintain relationships with both daughters, would occasionally let things slip. Rachel was having financial problems. Brad's law firm had gotten into trouble over an unrelated ethics violation, and his position there was uncertain. One of their investment properties had lost value. The mortgage on their big house was becoming hard to manage. Meanwhile, my life was transforming in ways I'd never imagined. As APX 247 advanced through Phase 1 trials successfully, Apex's value continued to climb. My stock options were indeed worth millions now. Elena promoted me again, this time to executive vice president. Sarah and I were being invited to conferences, interviewed by medical journals, recognized as leaders in the aging research field. I sold my condo in Evanston and bought a beautiful townhouse in Lincoln Park. Nothing as ostentatious as Rachel's house, but comfortable and truly mine. I started traveling, not just for work but for pleasure. I went to Italy, to Japan, to New Zealand. I hired a financial advisor and started thinking seriously about my future, about retirement, about legacy. The real vindication came about 18 months ago. We completed Phase 2 trials with excellent results. APX 247 showed significant improvements in markers of cellular health with minimal side effects. We announced plans for Phase 3 trials, the final stage before seeking FDA approval for market release. Major pharmaceutical companies started approaching Apex about partnerships or acquisition. The numbers being discussed were staggering. If we were acquired, my equity stake could be worth $50 million or more. $50 million. From a project my sister had tried to destroy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rachel had sabotaged what she thought was my chance at career success, at recognition, at maybe a modest bump in income. What she'd actually done was forced me out of a limited situation at Biogenesis and into a position where I could capture the full value of the work I'd helped create. If Project Renewal had continued at Biogenesis, I would have remained a salaried employee. Good salary, sure, but nothing like the equity I now held at Apex. By trying to ruin me, Rachel had inadvertently set me up for wealth beyond anything either of us had imagined. My mother hosted Thanksgiving last year, neutral territory she hoped would bring us together. I almost didn't go, but I decided I was done hiding. I'd done nothing wrong, and I wasn't going to let Rachel's bitterness keep me away from my mother. Rachel and Brad arrived in a car that was noticeably older than their previous luxury SUV. Rachel's designer clothes were still impeccable, but I noticed she'd cut her own hair instead of going to the expensive salon she used to frequent. Brad looked tired and stressed, drinking more wine than usual. I arrived in the new Audi I'd bought myself, wearing a cashmere sweater I'd purchased in Milan. I wasn't trying to show off. I was simply living my life, enjoying the fruits of my labor. Rachel's eyes took in everything, and I saw the calculation there, the comparison, the realization that the balance of power between us had fundamentally shifted. Dinner was tense. My mother tried to keep conversation light, asking about neutral topics. But eventually, Rachel couldn't help herself. So, Jenny, I hear Apex might be acquired. That must be exciting for you. It's one of several possibilities we're exploring, I said calmly. I suppose you stand to make quite a bit of money if that happens. I've been fortunate. The work has paid off. Must be nice to get lucky like that. I set down my fork and looked at her directly. It wasn't luck, Rachel. It was 15 years of education, 25 years of experience, countless hours of work, and staying committed to something I believed in even when it seemed like it had failed. That's not luck. That's dedication. Her face flushed. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. You meant exactly what you said. Because in your mind, the only way I could ever succeed is through luck, right? It couldn't possibly be because I'm good at what I do. It couldn't possibly be because I worked for it. Girls, please, my mother interjected. But I wasn't done. Do you want to know what's really ironic, Rachel? If you hadn't interfered, if you hadn't leaked my project details and helped create the situation that got Project Renewal shut down at Biogenesis, I would have just continued as a regular employee. I would have been successful, sure, but I wouldn't have had equity. I wouldn't have had ownership. By trying to sabotage me, you actually pushed me into the best situation of my life. Rachel went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You know exactly what you did, and you know that it backfired spectacularly. Brad looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. My mother looked sad but not surprised. You've always been jealous of me, I continued, my voice steady. I never understood why, because you always seemed to have more. Bigger house, richer husband, more obvious success. But none of it was ever enough for you, was it? You couldn't stand the idea that I might be happy or fulfilled or successful in my own way. That's not true, Rachel said, but her voice wavered. It is true, and the saddest part is that you sabotaged your own sister for nothing. You didn't gain anything from it. You just tried to hurt me, and it didn't even work. Rachel stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't, I agreed. You can leave. You can keep pretending you didn't do anything wrong, but we both know the truth. She grabbed her purse. Brad stood too, looking between us awkwardly. I'm sorry, Louise, Brad said to my mother. Thank you for dinner. They left, and my mother and I sat in silence for a moment. I'm sorry, Mom, I said finally. I didn't mean to ruin Thanksgiving. She reached across the table and took my hand. You didn't ruin anything, sweetheart. This has been building for a long time. I just wish it hadn't come to this. Me too. Are you happy? She asked. Truly happy? I thought about it. Yes, I really am. The work is fulfilling. I'm financially secure. I have good friends. I'm traveling, learning, growing. I wish I could have a better relationship with Rachel, but I can't control her choices. I can only control mine. My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. Your father would be so proud of you. Not just for the success, but for how you've handled yourself through all of this. That meant more to me than any amount of money. In the months since that Thanksgiving, I've had limited contact with Rachel. She didn't reach out after our confrontation, and I haven't pursued reconciliation. My mother keeps me updated on the basics. Rachel and Brad sold their house and moved to a smaller place in Des Plaines. Brad left his law firm and joined a smaller practice with less prestige but more stability. Rachel's real estate business has been steady but not spectacular. They're fine. They're not struggling or destitute. They've just had to adjust to a more modest lifestyle, the kind of lifestyle I lived for decades without complaint. Meanwhile, Apex did get acquired. 3 months ago, a major pharmaceutical company bought us for $2.8 billion. My equity stake, after taxes, netted me $43 million. $43 million. From a failed project. From something my sister tried to destroy. I could retire now if I wanted to. I'm only 52. I could travel the world, buy a bigger house, live a life of pure leisure. But that's not what I want. I've stayed on with the acquiring company as a senior consultant. APX 247 is continuing through Phase 3 trials, and I want to see it through to approval. I want to see the treatment I helped develop actually help people, because that was always the point. Not the money, not the success, not proving anything to Rachel. The point was to do something meaningful, something that could genuinely improve lives. The money is nice, don't get me wrong. It provides security and freedom I never had before. I've set up trusts for my future nieces and nephews if Rachel or any of my cousins have children. I've made a significant donation to Northwestern's biochemistry department. I've funded a scholarship for women in STEM fields who are starting their careers later in life. But the real reward is knowing that we solved the puzzle. We took an idea that seemed impossible and made it real. We pushed through obstacles and setbacks and sabotage and came out the other side with something valuable. I ran into Rachel a few months ago, completely by accident. I was having lunch at a restaurant in Old Town, and she walked in with a client, clearly in the middle of showing properties. She saw me and froze for a second. I nodded politely. She nodded back and moved to a table on the other side of the restaurant. I watched her go through her sales pitch with the client, watched her smile and gesture and charm. She was good at what she did. She always had been. And I realized sitting there that I didn't feel anger toward her anymore. I didn't feel vindication or satisfaction at how things had turned out. I mostly felt sad. Sad that she'd been so consumed by jealousy that she'd damaged our relationship beyond repair. Sad that she'd expended so much energy trying to undermine me instead of focusing on her own path. Sad that we'd never have the kind of sisterhood I'd once hoped for. But I also felt free. Free from the need for her approval. Free from the weight of her comparisons. Free from the fear that her sabotage could actually touch me. Because here's what I learned through all of this. The people who try to tear you down out of jealousy are operating from a place of deep insecurity. Rachel didn't sabotage my project because she hated me. She sabotaged it because my success reflected something back to her about her own choices, her own path, her own sense of self-worth. It was never really about me at all. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it helps me understand it. And understanding it means I can let it go. I think about my father sometimes, about his worries that I'd missed out on life by focusing so much on work. I wonder what he'd think if he could see me now. Not just the financial success, but the whole picture. The meaningful work, the travel, the confidence, the peace I've found in myself. I think he'd be happy. I think he'd see that I didn't miss out. I just took a different path, a longer path, a harder path. But one that led me exactly where I needed to be. Last week I got a letter from Sarah. She's stayed with the acquiring company too, continuing to lead the Senolytic Research Division. She wrote to tell me that the Phase 3 trials are showing even better results than we'd hoped. The FDA approval process is on track. We could see APX-247 on the market within 18 months. She ended the letter with something that made me tear up. Jennifer, I know this journey hasn't been easy. I know what you sacrificed and what you endured, but I want you to know that none of this would have happened without you. Not just your scientific contributions, but your resilience. When everyone else wanted to give up, you kept believing. Thank you for that. Thank you for believing enough for all of us. I've framed that letter and hung it in my home office, next to the patent certificates and the photos from our research team celebrations. It's a reminder that success isn't just about the end result. It's about who you become in the process of pursuing something difficult. I've become someone I'm proud of. Someone who weathered sabotage and setback and came through stronger. Someone who learned to set boundaries with toxic family members without losing her capacity for love. Someone who stayed true to her values, even when it would have been easier to give up or compromise. The money is wonderful. The professional recognition is gratifying. But the real treasure is knowing that I can trust myself. That I can survive betrayal and disappointment. That I can build something meaningful even when others try to tear it down. Rachel took her shot. She did her worst. And not only did I survive it, I thrived because of it. That's not revenge. That's justice. The quiet, steady, inevitable justice that comes when you refuse to let someone else's jealousy define your worth or limit your potential. I still see my mother regularly. We've found a new rhythm, one that doesn't involve Rachel or forced family gatherings. We have lunch once a week, go to museums, attend concerts. She's proud of me, and that means everything. She's asked me a few times if I think Rachel and I will ever reconcile. I don't know, Mom. I always tell her honestly. That would require Rachel to acknowledge what she did and why. It would require real accountability and change. I'm not holding my breath. But you'd be open to it? If she came to you? I don't know. Maybe, if it was genuine. But I'm not waiting for it. I'm not putting my happiness or peace on hold hoping my sister will have a moment of clarity. I'm living my life. And I am. Truly, fully living. I'm dating someone, actually. His name is Michael, and he's a professor of ethics at DePaul University. We met at a conference where I was speaking about the ethical considerations in aging research. He's thoughtful and kind, with a dry sense of humor that makes me laugh. He knows about the situation with Rachel, and he doesn't judge or try to fix it. He just accepts it as part of my story. I never thought I'd find partnership at this stage of my life, but here it is. Another unexpected gift. I've also started mentoring young women in science, particularly those who are facing obstacles or discrimination. I tell them my story, not to brag, but to show them that setbacks aren't endings. That sabotage says more about the saboteur than it does about you. That persistence and integrity matter more than immediate success. One of my mentees asked me recently, "Do you ever wish you could go back and do things differently? Avoid the sabotage altogether?" I thought about it carefully before answering. "No," I said finally. Because if I'd avoided it, I might have stayed comfortable. I might have played it safe. I might never have been forced to take the leap to apex, to bet on myself in a bigger way. The sabotage hurt. It was unfair. But it also revealed who I am under pressure. And I like who I discovered. She nodded, absorbing that. Plus, I added with a small smile, there's something deeply satisfying about succeeding despite someone's best efforts to stop you. It proves that talent and dedication are stronger than jealousy and manipulation. That's the truth I've carried forward. Rachel tried to write my story for me, tried to make it a story of failure and limitation. But she didn't get to write the ending. I did. And my ending is not about revenge or showing her up. It's about fulfillment, contribution, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I created something that will outlast both of us. APX 247 will help people. It will ease suffering. It will extend healthy lives. That legacy is worth more than any amount of money or any personal vindication. Rachel will have to live with knowing what she did and watching how it turned out. That's her burden to carry, not mine. As for me, I'm free. Free from her shadow. Free from her judgments. Free from the dysfunctional dance we did for 5 decades. I'm finally, truly free. And that freedom, that peace, that self-knowledge is the real fortune. The $43 million is just a pleasant side effect. Sometimes late at night, when I can't sleep, I think about what I'd say to Rachel if she ever came to me wanting genuine reconciliation. I've rehearsed different versions in my mind, some angry, some cold, some gracious. But I think what I'd really say is this. I forgive you, not because you've earned it or because what you did was okay. I forgive you because holding on to anger was poisoning me, and I chose to let it go. I forgive you for my own peace, not for yours. And I hope someday you find whatever you were looking for when you tried to tear me down. I hope you find it in yourself, instead of in comparison to others. I don't know if I'll ever get the chance to say those words. Rachel might never come. She might never acknowledge what she did. She might spend the rest of her life justifying and denying and resenting. That's her choice. My choice is to keep moving forward, to keep building, to keep contributing, to keep loving the life I've created despite her, and, in some strange way, because of her. The project she thought she destroyed made me rich. But more than that, it made me resilient. It made me brave. It made me certain of my own worth in a way I'd never been before. So in the end, Rachel gave me a gift, even if she never meant to. She gave me the gift of my own strength, and that's worth more than all the money in the world. I'm sitting in my home office right now, looking out at the Chicago skyline, the same city where Rachel and I grew up, where we shared a bedroom and fought over clothes and competed for attention. So much has changed, so much has remained the same. Tomorrow, I'm flying to San Diego for a conference where I'll be presenting our Phase 3 trial data to the research community. Next month, I'm going to Prague for a vacation with Michael. Next year, if all goes according to plan, we'll be celebrating FDA approval of APX 247. My life is full, my heart is full, my purpose is clear, and somewhere in Des Plaines, Rachel is selling houses and managing her downsized life, carrying the weight of what she did and what she lost. I don't gloat about that. I don't celebrate her struggles. But I don't feel guilty about my success either. I earned it, I survived for it, I transformed because of it. And that's my story. Not the story Rachel tried to write for me. Not a story of sisterly rivalry and petty revenge. My story is about a woman who loved her work, who stayed true to her values, who weathered betrayal, and who emerged on the other side not just wealthy but whole. That's the real success. That's the real victory. And no one, not even my jealous sister, can take that away from me. The end came not with a dramatic confrontation or a satisfying revelation where Rachel finally admits everything. The end came with me, alone, choosing peace, choosing forgiveness not for her sake, but for mine, choosing to release the bitterness that could have consumed me. Because here's the final truth I learned. Holding on to anger at Rachel wouldn't have punished her. It would have only imprisoned me. She'd already taken enough from me, tried to take my career, my reputation, my confidence. I wasn't going to let her take my peace too. So I let it go. All of it. The hurt, the betrayal, the years of feeling less than. And in letting it go, I became more than I ever thought possible. Not just a successful scientist, not just a wealthy woman, but someone who knows her own worth independent of anyone else's opinion or sabotage. That's freedom. That's victory. That's the life I built from the ashes of what Rachel tried to burn down, and it's more beautiful than anything I could have imagined.